Welcome to today's Explainer. We're digging into a really fascinating concept today, how keeping kids truly secure requires this seamless blend of top-down building codes and bottom-up, incredibly granular daily routines. It's not just about having a sturdy building, and honestly, it's not just about keeping a watchful eye either. It's about how those two distinct layers interact perfectly to protect our absolute most vulnerable population. Okay, let's dive into this. Dr. Depassion of Sario, the host of the Keeping Them Safe series, actually frames this dynamic perfectly. He says caring for young children requires attention to anything that might impact a child's health, safety, and wellness directly and indirectly. I absolutely love the emphasis on indirectly here. It really challenges us to look way beyond the obvious stuff. We aren't just looking out for, sharp corners or hot stoves. We have to look at the holistic environmental care of the space. Literally everything matters when it comes to the wellness of a child.
Now you might be wondering, why are we so intensely focused on this specific environment? Well, children are uniquely vulnerable simply because of their physical realities and their daily habits. Think about it. They spend a massive amount of time right down there crawling on the floors. And let's be real, toddlers essentially view the whole world as a giant taste testing menu. They constantly place their hands and, frankly, any random object they can find directly into their mouths. That behavior exposes them to harmful substances that you and I, as adults, just naturally bypass. Furthermore, as Dr. Sario points out, their little bodies and organ systems are still actively developing, so exposure to contaminated materials doesn't just cause a temporary upset, it can totally disrupt early development and result in permanent, lifelong health consequences. The stakes literally could not be higher.
Here is a quick roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start broadly with why child environments matter, move into structural safety and compliance, zoom in on the daily indoor and outdoor checklists, and finally, wrap up with how to build a permanent culture of daily accountability.
Section 1. Why child environments matter.
Before we get into the heavy regulations, I really want to acknowledge the early childhood educators, the directors, and the staff watching this. You are the frontline defenders of child wellness. The environment you curate is the absolute foundation of their safety, and this brilliantly illustrates how that defense is structured. We have the macro responsibilities handled by the public inspector, who's out there hunting for invisible threats like building code violations, ADA compliance issues, and toxic materials. Then we have the micro responsibilities handled by the classroom teacher. This is your daily hygiene, clutter management, those moment-to-moment safety checks. One side ensures the container itself is safe. The other side ensures the daily life happening inside that container is safe. They absolutely rely on each other.
Section 2. Structural safety and compliance.
Here's a pretty harsh reality. A perfectly executed, safe daily routine simply cannot exist inside a fundamentally unsafe building. We have to start at the macro-level funnel. Before children are ever allowed inside a newly constructed, renovated, or remodeled facility, public inspectors have to evaluate the building for invisible environmental threats. Older buildings can hide toxic nightmares like lead and asbestos. In the wake of natural disasters, facilities must be checked to assure they're structurally sound and not emitting contaminants or off-gassing. Safety codes also dictate the exact square footage of space per child, ensuring adequate ventilation, integrated pest management, and proper heating, cooling, and lighting. These are the foundational elements of what makes a building legally habitable for a developing child.
But, a structurally sound building must also be an accessible one. The ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, alongside Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, mandates that facilities be physically accessible to both children and adults with disabilities. And this isn't just about getting through the front door. It is a non-negotiable cornerstone of safety that includes equitable access to toilets, sinks, drinking fountains, meal areas, and outdoor play spaces. All of these macro-level structural standards are actually detailed quite heavily in Caring for Our Children, which is an incredible collection of best practice standards for early care and education.
Section 3. The Daily Indoor Checklist. Let's move to and see how this builds.
Zoom all the way in with me. From those state structural building codes down to the very moment a teacher unlocks their classroom door in the morning. The daily checklist mandates a highly specific sequence of events to establish a firm baseline of hygiene and safety right at the start of the day. First, staff purses and personal items are immediately locked away, kept completely out of the reach of children. Second, hands are washed by both staff and children the absolute second they arrive. No exceptions. Third, the teacher performs a brief visual health check on each child, which includes direct communication with the parent or caregiver dropping them off. This routine just beautifully sets the tone for the entire day.
It's all about actively neutralizing those everyday classroom items that could easily become severe threats. For example, All chemicals and plastic bags are locked and kept completely out of reach at all times. Heavy toys? They're stored safely on the lowest shelf to prevent them from tumbling down on a child. Window cords are meticulously adjusted to remove any strangulation risk. And this one actually surprises a lot of people. Air fresheners and Sensi warmers are strictly prohibited. That ensures the air remains entirely clear of potential respiratory irritants. It's really fascinating how a teacher's daily routine turns a room full of potential hazards into a totally secured learning space.
Now, when we step into the infant room, we are dealing with the absolute most vulnerable population in the entire building. So naturally, the protections become even more rigorous. Bottles must be labeled with the child's full name and the date and refrigerated immediately. And listen, you never ever save or reuse a used bottle. For sleep safety, infants are always placed on their backs, in a crib with a tight-fitting mattress and a secure-fitted sheet. And this is crucial, absolutely no soft bedding, no blankets, no bumper pads, and definitely no stuffed toys in those cribs. Finally, safety restraints are non-negotiable. They must always be used in high chairs, strollers, and infant seats.
Section 4. The Daily Outdoor Checklist.
So now we're stepping out of that highly controlled indoor classroom environment and into the wild, unpredictable variables of the outdoor play areas. Nature has a funny way of leaving surprises overnight, right? So before a single child's sneaker even hits the playground mulch, caregivers have to actively scan and clear the area. Every single morning requires a fresh sweep. Teachers check for adequate drainage, ensuring there's no standing water. They actively remove trip and slip hazards, physically sweeping rocks and sand off the hard walking surfaces. They clear any trash, debris, or broken glass that may have blown in overnight. They literally have to look out for animals, snakes, or harmful insects. And finally, they make sure the perimeter gates are closed securely and that the sandbox was kept clean and covered when it wasn't being used.
Whether we're indoors or outdoors, we absolutely have to talk about what the safety checklists call the Red Backpack Protocol. The rule is fundamental. The first aid kit must be available at all times, checked monthly, appropriately stocked, and hanging completely out of the reach of children. The children do not carry the backpack. This is such a brilliant example of the delicate paradox required in child care safety. The emergency supplies must be instantly accessible to the teacher at a moment's notice, but entirely 100% inaccessible to the curious hands of the kids.
Section 5. Culture of Daily Accountability. So the crucial point is,
All these rules, right? They literally mean absolutely nothing without execution. It's time to shift the narrative from simply checking off boxes on a piece of paper to establishing a living, breathing, permanent safety culture in the facility. When tracking daily outdoor playground safety, the relentless repeating nature of that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday grid is essential. The staff physically puts their initials on the paper if the area is in compliance. This visual grid represents the relentless daily repetition required to maintain a secure environment. It proves that safety is never ever a one-and-done task. It is a continuous daily commitment.
But hey, what happens when something isn't in compliance? If an issue is found, say a broken toy or a ripped window screen, the staff places an X on the front page and immediately logs the details in the problem resolution section. They log the date, their name, the specific problem, who was notified, the exact date they were notified, and finally, the date the problem was actually corrected. This is what we call a closed accountability loop. It ensures that identified hazards don't just get pointed out and forgotten. They get officially reported, rigorously tracked, and undeniably resolved.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really powerful, reflective question directly from Dr. Sario. What policies and procedures do you have in place to assure facilities are safe and regular inspections are done? It's a question that demands an immediate, honest look at your own environment. Are you just relying on that building inspector from 3 years ago, or are you enforcing that daily, relentless, bottom-up checklist? Remember, when it comes to the kids in our care, the more you learn, the safer they are. Thanks for joining me today, and keep making those spaces safe.